So, my name is Nick. I'm a life coach and a wellness educator. What I like to do basically is blend life coaching, personal development, psychology, neuroscience, mindfulness all together when we're looking at all of these topics. So, you'll get a little fusion of all of those things. So, we'll have a little look at what we're going to talk about today, which is self-compassion, one of the most overlooked aspects of personal life and business life as well. And just a little reminder, if you want to take some notes as you go along, I always think that's really helpful. So if you've got something you can scribble on if anything comes up, that would be really great. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at what is self-compassion, why it matters so much, the three components of self-compassion, the critic versus coach, which we touched on a little bit last week, but I want to talk a little bit more about that, the science behind some of this stuff, and practical strategies that you can use to get yourself started. So, very quickly, Suzanne, you've reminded me, if you want to introduce yourself and put your links, websites, LinkedIn profiles, all of that stuff, please feel free to share in the chat. It's always good to see you guys connecting as well. So please use the chat as you would like. So, by now, maybe I always like to start with a question. So here's today's big question. How difficult do you find it to have compassion for yourself? So your scale is 1 to 5. So 1 being very difficult. I often criticize myself. 2 maybe is quite difficult. 3 might be kind of neutral. 4 easy. 5 very easy. You're one of those people who are really kind and forgiving with themselves. So let's see what we've got. Oh my God, lots of 1s. Oh, Wendy, you're good. Yep. 1s. Mid-range. It's great to see where everyone is. I like to do this so that we have an idea of where we're all at. A lot in the kind of middle range, which is great too, but a lot of 1s. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So another question for you, if you want it, is if you had to sum up your relationship with self-compassion in 1 word, what would it be? I know it's tough to kind of keep it to 1 word, but I think it's useful to try and narrow your attention down. Ooh, emerging. That's a nice word. Kim, none. Okay, we're going to work on that today. Kim, harsh. Yeah, that's a common one. Lacking, low, critical, fairness. Yeah. Evolving, developing, self-critical. Yes, I was going to give you some examples, but you guys are all over it. Yeah, things I've heard before are like harsh, evolving, guilty, growing, non-existent. Joan, getting there, 2 words. You're allowed an extra word. Yeah, sometimes fleeting. Yeah, because I always think when we're talking about any of these topics, it's good to get a little bit of clarity on where are you right now, and then we'll go from there. Wherever you are, whether you're a 1 or a 4, I don't think I've seen any 5s, but for the 5s out there, great too. Let's work on maintaining that. But it's good to just see where you're at. No judgment, no criticism, just write it down and see, because you might want to take a little note. And I always encourage people to write the date on your notes for something like this, because when you find it randomly, in maybe 3, 4 months' time, you can look back and say, is anything different? Because you don't notice your evolution maybe sometimes as you go along. So it's good to have these little markers in place. So next, I want to talk about what is self-compassion exactly. And I found this little description on it when I was doing the research for this, and I really liked it. So as you can see, it says self-compassion is like having your own personal motivational coach with you 24/7, a kind, comforting, and yet demanding coach who holds you accountable and protects your long-term goals, whilst also acknowledging the pain of failure and suffering. And I like this because it's saying it's kind and comforting, but that doesn't mean that, it lets you off the hook. It's also demanding, because you demand the best of yourself. So this comes from one of the papers on selfcompassion.org. So I've put the website here so you can have a look. So this website is Dr. Kirsten Neff. So she's widely kind of regarded as the leading expert pioneer in this kind of field of study. So she's a scientist who basically has made this her only focus. This is primarily what she looks at, what she focuses her whole career on. And she's the one who defined and constructed the kind of definition of self-compassion in its current, psychological, more formal model, if you like. So before her, there was no work on it. There was no formal or kind of measurable definition of what it really is in academic research. So what she did was she developed the self-compassion scale. So this is the tool now that, lots and lots of studies use to assess self-compassion. So there's lots of really great stuff on her website. So take a little screenshot or you'll get the recording obviously afterwards and you can have a little look. She's been working in this field for decades now, but her 2003 paper, which was all about trying to have a healthy attitude toward yourself, is really one of the core foundational papers of this whole subject. So if that's something you're interested in, you could have a little look. I've included in this one because there's a lot more kind of scientific information. I've included a page of sources at the end. So if you're interested in some of this stuff, you can read about it later. Um, what else about Kirsten? She also created the MSc program, so it's Mindful Self-Compassion program that's now taught by therapists and coaches and lots of healthcare people around the world. So she co-wrote that with a guy who I can't remember his name, but if you look it up, you'll be able to find that. What I love about her approach is she kind of bridges this world of science and real world application. Sometimes some of these scientific papers can be really difficult to read and you're trying to get to the point, but she brings it to the point but using scientific information. So it's all rooted in evidence. So her stuff is highly reliable when you want to learn a little bit more. So I think it's just good to know where this is coming from, if that makes sense. And a lot of the work that I'll do today with you guys is based on her approach. So let's look at her three components of self-compassion. So the first thing is this is not just about being nice to yourself. This is powerful research-backed frameworks that we're going to be talking about today. So first thing is she defines it as having three essential components. So the first one is self-kindness. Instead of judging yourself so harshly when things, might go wrong or something happens, you choose to speak to yourself with warmth, with patience, and with care. So it means maybe saying to yourself, this is really hard right now, rather than, oh my God, I'm such a mess. I'm such a failure. How could I have let this happen? I should know better. That's one that used to pop into my head all the time and still does occasionally, to be fair. But I would think, I should know better than this. And then I would catch myself and say, why should I know better? This is the first time doing it, and try to catch myself and change that narrative around. But when you're thinking about it from a business perspective, this helps you recover faster from making mistakes, which, let's face it, we're all going to make. So if you have a recovery strategy, basically think about it like this. So this is going to help you recover faster and keep things going even when things don't go perfectly. So it's not going to throw you back 5 steps, it's going to put you back two, and your recovery time is faster. Second one is common humanity. Now, this is a really interesting one as well because it's good just to keep in your mind. It's the reminder that you're not alone in this. Everyone struggles, everyone fails occasionally, and it's really easy to feel isolated and, like you're on your own when you're building a business, like you're the only one who hasn't figured this stuff out yet, whether that's social media or marketing or, MailChimp or, whatever, whatever your current battle is, you're not the only one. So you kind of remind yourself that this common humanity aspect is normal and it helps you to connect to other people, which is partly why we love these calls so much because you can see from each other in the chat, you're not the only one. It helps you feel part of this kind of collective that we're all in this together trying to do something. And it kind of gives you a little steer so that you don't feel so isolated. And the third one is mindfulness in general. Now, mindfulness means pretty much being aware of what we're thinking and feeling in the moment, but without exaggerating it and without minimizing it. So it's just exactly what it is. So it's giving yourself a little bit of space to respond instead of react. So you're trying to become a little bit more aware of how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and then just almost like just pausing in that space to see what comes next. So in a busy work life, this basically gives you a little bit more, let's call it like a clarity space, where everything's positive, everything's negative. You've got this kind of more clarity space in the middle. It helps you to hang out there a little bit more. Because when things are going great, obviously that's brilliant. When things are going not so great, it takes a little bit more effort to get up there. But if you think about it like, no matter what happens, I'm going to try and stay in this neutral band, it helps because you're not going to be able to fall down from a place of maybe panic or self-ridicule or criticism. You're going to be able to try and keep yourself in this equilibrium. So think about the fact that I'm going to just be more aware of what's going on. I've included a little quote from Kirsten Neff here at the bottom, which says, with self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness and care we'd give to a friend. And that's important because, if you guys were buddying up and talking to each other, you would be a lot kinder to someone else than you would be to yourself. And that's always just something to remember. I'm going to become different with myself, more patient, more kind. We're going to talk about this a little bit later as well. So, why does this matter so much? And I wanted to focus a little bit on women here because I know we're predominantly women. I did see a William, so hello, William, you're welcome here. But excuse me for a minute while I focus on women because this matters a lot, despite, there's lots of growing number of women in business, but research does show that internal and external pressures disproportionately affect our confidence, our energy, and our well-being. So I want to go through this and spend a wee bit of time because this is important that you see the scale of what we're talking about. So imposter syndrome, which a lot of you have mentioned in the previous calls. So, as an example, 75% of executive women report this imposter syndrome at least once in their careers. So, this was from a KPMG study in 2020. You'll be familiar with this, that old thought of, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, they're going to find me out. I see Kim nodding. We're all familiar with this thought. But if 75%'s a high number. If we're all experiencing this, then again, we're all in this together. Don't let that stop you. Just be aware that it's happening. Burnout is important because again, women are more likely to report burnout than men are, especially in leadership roles or caregiving situations sometimes, where women are carrying the emotional load at work and home. And there's a study, and I didn't include it here because I didn't put it in the information, but there was a study recently that said, and it was thousands and thousands of people, all cultures and, all genders and all ethnicities and everything. The general consensus was that women hold up the mental load 71% in their household, which you all probably are like, yeah, I get that. That's just the way that, multiple societies are. So that information as well on the burnout that came from a Women in the Workplace report, which is 2021. So there's all of this really great information out there, but I know it can be really overwhelming to try and figure it out. But I also know that you're going to resonate with some of these for yourself because you've experienced them or you know someone who has. Third one, perfectionism, which we covered a little bit. But again, women are more prone to perfectionism than men are, leading to procrastination, which we've also talked about, leading to a fear of failure, which can be heightened, and crucially, overworking as well. So that's from a psychological bulletin that was 2017. Overworking, I think we haven't talked about enough in any of these calls, but that is something that happens as well, predominantly more in women than men. Unfair comparison. So 61% of female entrepreneurs compare themselves to others online. She's doing better, she's doing more, she's faster. Why can I not do it? And it affects your self-esteem. This is from Simply Business in 2021. So again, I know that a lot of you will recognize that because we're all guilty of it at time to time. But the difference is when you're more aware of these things, again, you notice it, you cut it off, and you don't let it stop your progress. So high expectations and people pleasing, again, that's a whole other topic on its own. But let's just remind ourselves that women are more likely to undervalue their work and to over deliver to meet expectations. So, that classic example of when men apply for a job, they apply for 60% of a job spec. Women kind of wait for the 100. I must have all of the things before I can push myself forward. And that was the confidence gap HP report. That's where that originally came from. But it's been shown to be a real thing. And also the juggling family and work, which again, many people are, used to, but 65% of UK women say carrying responsibilities in some form impacts their ability to grow or work in a business. So it's this kind of always on mentality. Um, I met a group in Dumfries and Galloway last week for a networking event based on the work-life balance call that we had last week. And they were saying a lot of the same things. It's this always on, you've got emails on your phone, you're always on alert. If you have your own business, it's really, really hard to switch off. So it's this kind of no space to rest, and that can bring its own challenges as well. And then you've got what I call the capacity problem. I didn't get this one from anywhere because I kind of made this one up, but I believe it because I have been this person. So the capacity problem is what I think happens when women are highly capable, highly resourceful, and suddenly they take more, give themselves more, accept more, and keep going until something gives. You're taking, the juggler is throwing you the balls and you're juggling, you can take them, you can take them, you can take them until you can't, and then you drop one. But and I'm speaking from personal experience here, this is not from a study or anything, but I've seen it so often, and this happened to me too, that when you're capable and you can do things and you can handle the pressure and you can take it on because you have to power through, when does that end? So you take and you take and you take, and you just get more balls, and at some point they're all going to fall. So it's a little bit of a repetitive loop. And just personally, again, I see this in women more than I do in men. Personal reflection, but I believe that you're with me, you'll probably get it. So this makes a big difference to your business. And this is what we're talking about, specifically is how does this impact your business? So here's 5 reasons, 5 ways that it does make a difference. So again, this first one, I put the links for all the sources of these in the end. So just for reference, if you want to go and read a little bit more. But the first one was from Kirsten Neff and Katie Breens, and that was 2013. And basically, she found that people who practice self-compassion are more likely to bounce back from setbacks, learn from their mistakes. And interestingly, as well, really importantly, I think, is to stay motivated over time. So if you're more compassionate and you stay motivated over time, then the self-compassion supports this sustainable motivation, even when things go wrong. I think that's really important because when things go wrong, sometimes again, you take a big knock, you have to build yourself back up. But if you know that self-compassion is linked to resilience and motivation, there's a little bit of like, oh, hang on, I need to work at this. It may not come easy. That's okay. So think about this as, this is really crucial for navigating the ups and downs, if you like, of, having your own business and being an entrepreneur. So number two, self-compassion as a core leadership competency. So this study presented that self-compassion was a foundation for emotional intelligence, leadership, and basically how leaders in general dealt with failure, the decisions that they make, and the relationships that they had with their team. So the kind of summary of this one was basically that self-compassion leaders are more authentic and able to relate better with others. So really interesting. The third one, self-compassion supports entrepreneurial grit and persistence. Again, really, really interesting. So self-compassion linked to entrepreneurial success hasn't been studied as much as in recent years, but when I checked, there was over 1,600 studies, and I think that was from 2019 backwards. So there's thousands of entries now into how these are linked. So basically, they were exploring how entrepreneurs with higher levels of self-compassion were more likely to persist, to take really healthy risks, and manage any failures constructively. So, self-compassion helped to moderate the fear of failure, which is obviously, as we know, one of the top barriers for anyone starting a business. And it's really interesting that, again, you think about, okay, the fear of failure pops up a lot. How can I navigate that? Work on your self-compassion. And it's not something that we would naturally kind of think of, as that pops into your head, but try to think about, like, I want to give you the building blocks of what can help and why, because people can tell you this stuff, but if you understand why, I feel like it resonates deeper. So, number four was it reduces burnout and increases engagement. So, this was from a 2019 study. And basically, employees scored higher on self-compassion. Those were the people who showed greater job satisfaction, less and lower levels of burnout, and high engagement. So these are the people that were more likely to ask for help than, just try to do it all themselves. They were taking more restorative breaks and ultimately improving their productivity in the long term. So think about it like a self-protection mechanism. Self-compassion can protect you from future events. And I think that gives you a little bit of motivation on its own to say, okay, I'm going to start to take this a little bit more seriously. And the fifth one was navigating imposter syndrome. So I couldn't find one single study that was like pinpointed on this exactly, but there's multiple articles and kind of coaching resources that indicate, if you like, that self-compassion can help to reduce the effects of imposter syndrome because you are being nicer to yourself ultimately, and kinder and more empathetic and more patient, and all of these things. So I feel like it does make sense. So I know we're powering through here, but I feel like I want to keep going and give you as much as I can. So let's talk about the inner critic. I know we touched on this a little bit last week, but I want to talk about the inner critic versus the inner coach again, because I think this is really important. So this is the little voice that keeps you small and keeps you safe and may keep you stuck if you listen. So this is some examples I've got on here of how the inner critic can show up when you're building your business. Excuse me. So who am I to be doing this? I'm not ready. I'm not good at it. What will people think? If someone else has already, got into that market. I can see some faces who are resonating here. I can see you. So I don't have the time or energy. I'll do it when I'm more confident. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to study more. I'm going to become more of an expert. And actually, you already are an expert because no one will have the information like you do. I'm going on a tangent now, but just when I'm thinking about it, there's a really good book called The Unfair Advantage by Ali Abdaal, and he was a doctor who he didn't actually retrain. He became a productivity expert by doing it on the side, and now that's what he does. Basically, the gist of the book says that you've got a very unique set of skills that no one else has. If you truly believe that, you will be able to project yourself forward authentically as yourself, not trying to be anyone else, which ultimately helps with comparison as well. So I sidelined with that, but I wanted to pop it in there when I remembered it because it's a really good one. So let's talk about the inner entrepreneur. So I want you to think about you're going to employ your first member of staff if you don't have any already, and it's your inner coach. So I try to think about this because this is the alternative voice, the one that is rooted in self-belief and learning in yourself and possibility and all of the things that you can try to encourage in yourself. This voice is really honest. but it's also kind and supportive, and it's future forward focused. So it might hear something like this. You might hear something like this. I don't know everything yet, but I have enough to get started. Or some examples. What have I got here? Courage becomes before confidence. Progress is better than perfection. There's room for my voice and my way of doing things. I will learn by taking action. My value isn't in being flawless, it's in being real. Mistakes mean I'm growing and I'm building something meaningful, and I'm allowed to enjoy the process. And that means, the ups and downs. So I want you to think about, what voice have you been listening to the most? Remember that your brain has something called the negative bias. So negative situations, negative thoughts, they will have a larger impact on your brain than the positive ones. So that's why you need to really encourage this inner coach, this inner entrepreneur, if you like, and really try and think about it like, I'm hiring them now. That's the voice that I want to hear. It's a really simple strategy, but when you have that kind of switching mechanism in your brain, you can do it any way you want. You can give them little identities or call them different names or say, you know what, I'm not listening to you today. I'm gonna, I need a little bit of insight from the other one, because that's sometimes what you need to take that next step. So thinking about this, what would your inner coach or your inner entrepreneur say to you today? And think about it. We're halfway through the session. We started where we started, and you've given me all your numbers. We're halfway through, and I want you to think about, what would your inner entrepreneur say right now to you today? What's that next thing? Is it your website? Is it, something that you're putting off? Are you procrastinating on something? Is it a little bit of self-belief? Is it like, you've got this? What would it say? If you want to, you can put that in the chat, because that might be really good for you to hear from each other. What? Record the videos, stop procrastinating, Wendy. Yeah, you can do this. You're more capable than you know. Oh, Louise, if only everyone really believed that. That's it. I love that one. You're trying your best. That's it. Take the first step. Stop doubting yourself. Like, look at all these amazing ones. You don't need my examples. You can take your guys. These are brilliant. You know what you're doing and you're good at it. You don't need to be perfect to start. Oh, I love this. So when you've got your statement, write it down. I encourage you to write this down. And then act from a place of, okay, I'm going to listen to this person. So think about that coming from someone you really respect. So it could be a teacher, from your school in the past. I had a couple of really amazing teachers that I still remember, and I think about, wow, how incredible they were. Or, you could go the other way, and you could imagine someone like, this might be a bit random, so apologies in advance, but it could be someone like Oprah. If she rang you up and said that statement, then what would you do? You'd believe her probably. But what would you do next? You can learn as you go. That's a great one. And the whole point of this and what we're talking about is I want you to understand that mindset matters. I've just picked marketing here as an example, but mindset matters just as much as all the other things, just as much as marketing, just as much as your product, just as much as anything else. And sometimes, we focus so much on the strategy of what we're doing, the visibility, your product, your getting everything out there. But the real game changer is what's going on in your mind. You might have the best business plan in the world, but if your mindset, is full of self-doubt, perfectionism, procrastination, fear of judgment, if you're being really critical to yourself, it will hold you back. So mindset isn't really about being positive, that doesn't really exist because the mind is what it is. It's about building a relationship with yourself that helps move you through the fear, move you through the action, and helps you to stay resilient and strong when things get hard, which they will, which is the nature of, the world that we're in. So I want you to think about, when you believe in yourself, your business will become a reflection of that belief. So imagine what you could do if you really believed in yourself. Like, what would be possible? And let your brain go big. Let it go a little bit bigger than you normally would let it. What would happen if you really believed in yourself? And what would that mean for your business? Thank you for all this encouragement you're giving each other. I won't keep up with them all, but I can see some beautiful commentary happening here. So I want you to now think about it. I want to just give you a little bit of kind of backup for what I'm saying because it all sounds good. And yeah, that would all be great if it was true, but there is science to back this up. So in this part, I want to introduce, if you haven't heard of him yet, Dr. David Hamilton's work on self-love and the body and the brain and all of that. I can see a couple of you nodding. He actually comes to Glasgow quite often. I seen him a few months ago in the Glee Club in Glasgow. So he comes around and he tours and he does these kind of talks. So keep an eye out for him. But he basically says that this is a science. This is not, fluffy stuff that sounds really good but doesn't make any sense in the real world. This is not fluffy, it's functional. So it's not about your ego or indulgence. This is emotional regulation. This is resilience and it's your mental well-being. So I put on this slide that kindness to yourself is a business superpower. I want you to really remember that. What will happen if you're kind to yourself is things will start to shift and move, and you won't really know why, but you kind of have to trust me that this will happen because you will take different actions and you will present yourself differently when you are kinder to yourself. So, according to David, oh, yeah, Karen, love his work. Excellent. So, according to David, self-love changes the brain and the body. It helps you to feel safer, calmer, and more capable. So, he's actually got a few different books. I think my favorite one is, well, he's got The Five Side Effects of Kindness and I Heart Me is a really good one. And he's written it so lovely. It's really nice to listen to as an audiobook, if anyone wants to. I put them in the book recommendations again at the end. So, what is the problem with this scientific part? So, the problem is self-criticism activates the threat system in your body. So, when you criticize yourself, you trigger the brain's threat response, which is your F3 response. So, what's the result of this? Your cortisol increases, muscle tension, your heart rate. There's lots of different, loads more than we could talk about here. Physical reactions occur in the body, but it also impacts your brain. So you may lack clarity, your creativity is, compressed, doesn't work the same. Your decision making is compromised because your prefrontal cortex, which is this front part of your brain, doesn't function as well because your body's designed that way to react when a threat approaches. So you're literally taking your own resource and dampening it if you think about it that way. What happens from there is the thoughts kind of spiral. I messed up. I'm not good enough to do this. I knew I was wrong. I knew I shouldn't have did this. The risk is too big. I'm not cut out for this, blah, blah, blah. And this becomes a repetitive loop. Now, the problem with your brain and repetitive loops are when the loop is running, it's really, really hard to break it. And the more that it runs, the repetition occurs, the more that it ingrains itself in. The problem is you can actually end up believing this. And you're like, oh, maybe I do believe it right now. The problem is maybe it's just been running a little bit too often and you need to kind of unwind that a little bit. So, what's the solution? The solution is self-kindness, activating the soothing system in your body, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So, this increases your feelings of safety, connection, and emotional balance. So, what happens physically is the feel-good chemicals, if you like, are released, such as oxytocin, serotonin, and these are the same hormones that help you bond with others and ultimately feel safe. So in this state, the thought loop is softer, it's more compassionate, it's kinder, and it sounds a little bit more like, it's okay. I'm learning, what you guys were talking about in the comments. I can try again. It's okay to get this wrong. And what happens is the brain kind of shifts to a calm state. Clarity is present, and the action as if there is no threat, which means the action will be more deliberate and conscious and thoughtful than in the fear response. So, why this matters again in business, when we shrink it all down, When you operate from emotional safety, you're more confident taking risks. You will recover from setbacks faster. You will speak up for yourself more. You will create whatever that next step is from a place of like groundedness and belief that you could actually do this. So try and think about it like small acts of self-love, self-compassion, kindness help to build the inner strength that you need to handle the outer challenges. And when you're already juggling everything already, you know this is kind of what you need. It's a kind of missing part of the puzzle, if you like. So what I want you to try and really absorb here is you can't show up fully for your business if you're tearing yourself down. You can't show up fully for your business if you're tearing yourself down. And how you really treat yourself sets the tone for your business. And think about your business as a projection of you. So how are you treating yourself? How are you projecting that forward? I put this lovely quote from David Hamilton here because I liked it. The most powerful force in the universe is the love that we direct at ourselves. And he's a really beautiful energy, really lovely speaker to listen to. So if you ever get the chance, I would encourage you um, to go and see him. He really is all about the science, and his message ultimately is that the science supports this. Don't let yourself believe that this is just, something nice on the side. This is really crucial. So, what if your business depends on this? That's how serious I want you to think about it. What if your business depends on it? Another book I want to recommend, I hope I'm not overwhelming you with too many, but I know that if you're like me, you'll have a list of lots to get to. But I read this one recently and I really liked it. It's Kamel Ravikant, and it's Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And the concept is quite simple. He talks about the vow, which is his mantra. So when I read it, I thought we could use it in this conversation together because we could build our own personal mantras and use the science of repetition to kind of build this idea of self-belief. So his one that he used in the book is, he just repeated, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself as often as he could remember. But for you guys, you could make that as personal as you want. I know sometimes it doesn't feel right to take someone else's thought and try to, you feel like you're pretending to make it yours. But if you make one that's suitable for you, it'll imprint even more. So try to think about it like, it's like brushing your teeth. It's like mental hygiene. So you're going to rewire your brain, you're going to rewire your mindset, and ultimately with the intention that you're going to transform your life and your business. So examples of this could be something like, I am learning and growing every day. Keep it nice and simple. I'm allowed to take up this space, in this industry, in this room, in this group, whatever that is. I love and support myself. I'm my biggest cheerleader. The entrepreneur, the coach is alive and thriving. And even something like, I deserve to give this a go. I deserve to try this. You don't want to wait until you think you're ready. You want to try and build a habit that is going to help get you there. So if anything is coming to mind, try to scribble down a little mantra that is relevant for you. The biggest thing about this kind of work, it's the same as affirmations, and there's a lot of science behind affirmations, even though some people dismiss them quickly. There's a lot of science behind this idea of the repetition because of just how the brain works and how it operates. But the main thing to know is it needs to be consistent. So if you think you'll forget, put it on your phone for, say it was your lunchtime at 12:30 every day. Put a little reminder on your phone and just set an alarm and put it as the little title. Or stick a little sticky note on your mirror in the bathroom or on your desk or somewhere that you're going to see it. Help yourself out if this is unfamiliar and see what a difference it makes. Because if you truly believe that mantra, you will act differently. So think about it like you want it to seep into the subconscious. People ask me all the time, I understand that your subconscious, leads a lot of your behavior. How do you change your subconscious? This is one of the ways. You kind of sprinkle information around and let it absorb. So, I'll tell people to put inspirational mottos or photos or things all around their environments, because sometimes you don't need to consciously be aware of it. You need to be in the presence of inspiration. So, this is my theory on this whole subject that we're talking about today. So, my theory is success equals strategy plus self-compassion. Obviously, of course, you need all of the strategic stuff. You need the right marketing, you need the product, you need the prices, you need the right execution plan. Yes, of course, all of that is really important. But think about it like half the story. What really is going to sustain you is how you treat yourself along the way. So if self-compassion gives you the resilience to keep going, the courage to take risks, the sometimes, the grace and kindness to grow without burning yourself out in the process, then it's going to be a really effective long-term strategy. So think about success, whatever that looks like for you, strategy plus self-compassion. So let's talk about some practical strategies because I want to give you a couple of things that you can get started on. If you're thinking, okay, I'm going to give it a go. What can I do? You can pick from a little suggestion list that I have here. So the first one is just a compassion pause. You just stop, breathe, speak very kindly to yourself, like I hope you're doing right now, and check in with yourself often. So when I started doing this a while ago, I did the alarm thing. That's why I suggested to people. I put the little alarm on the repetitive thing, say it was 1 o'clock every day, with the little label was like, come on, you can do this, or I can't remember what it was exactly, but it got to the point where then I didn't need it anymore because I was just kind of naturally thinking about it. So just that natural pause to stop and think about what you're doing. Ask yourself daily, what do I need right now? So again, this is one, if you think you're going to struggle to remember and you need a little bit of help with the repetition, put this on a post-it note or, put it next to your kettle or something where you're going to see it. What do I need right now? Sometimes it might be space. It might not be pushing yourself to work late. It might be actually, I need a break. I need to sleep. I need to eat better. I need to drink. I haven't had a water all day. Whatever that is, what do I need right now? Self-celebration practice. I like this little weekly wins, however small, anything counts. And again, put this in the chat if you would like to. What's a little win that you achieved recently? I bet you all have one, but you've probably not focused on it again because of the negative bias. You've probably just kind of, let it go under the surface. So what is a little win that you could celebrate yourself? Next thing is called the implementation intention. Remember we talked about James Clear when we were talking about the habits. This is linked to all of that. And the idea is you make a strategy. So the next time I feel self-doubt, I will XYZ. The next time I feel like I'm being really critical on myself, I am going to XYZ. And you make up a strategy so that when that happens, you're ready. A lot of you will heard of mirror work. It's quite a tough one. And if it feels too much and too jarring for you right now, start with a little sticky note. So start with, saying something kind on the note and put it on the mirror and just read the note and don't look at yourself. A lot of coaches will say, force yourself to do it, but I think you have to take it at your own speed. If you're not there yet, work your way up to that. If you were coaching or mentoring yourself, what would you say? If you were coaching yourself again, what would you say? And hopefully this resonates because you've done that exercise before. And I like this one. It's a little compassionate close to your day. At the end of every day, again, you could put a little reminder in your phone, maybe if that helps. What can I thank myself for today? And that might be rest or, sending that email that you were a little bit afraid to do, or, reaching out for a collaboration, or just changing the website or changing a profile picture or anything at all. But what can you thank yourself for that day? And again, over time, the impact of this is really, really huge. Please don't underestimate it. If I didn't say anything else, this would probably be enough to tell you. You are your business's most valuable asset. You're your business's most valuable asset. Are you treating yourself as such? Dramatic silence. Are you treating yourself as such? You are so valuable. And if you treated yourself with compassion and kindness and care, just allow yourself to think about what would this mean? What would this mean for me? What would change? Would it be easier? Would it be a little bit, would you feel more daring and able to step forward? Because if you're not so much afraid of the failure, then you can lean in a little bit more because the failure is okay. So what would you do? And I really want you to take this in and write it down if it resonates. You know, you're your most valuable asset. And you think about all the other things you value. Yes, they're important, but so is this. So are you. So I've got a little list of book recommendations that I think would be helpful if you want to. Obviously, this is a giant topic, and I feel like we're scratching the surface a little bit, but hopefully enough that you feel like you can take a little bit of something. Um, so I've got, yeah, David Hamilton's. Oh, I've only got the one on there. So the other one is, yeah, The Five Side Effects of Kindness. The Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Two by Kirsten Neff, which is really good. She's got hundreds of papers. So if you're interested in the scientific paper side, you can check that out too. Brené Brown, a few of you will probably have heard of. Trusting the Gold and The Artist's Way. A good, a good little combination of books for you to read. And further sources, I know they're tiny, but again, hopefully you can make them out and you'll get the recording so that you can have a look. If you wanted to read any more of the scientific side, then of course you can. So brilliant. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure, and I will see you all next time.